Hello, I'm Matt Donnelly, and this is another edition of the Primetime Preview featuring week number 2's contest between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now let's get right into this one right off the get-go here. The Chiefs lead this all-time series with the Chargers with a 65, 58, and 1 record and hold a 3-2 advantage in the last 5 contests, with 2 of those wins coming in overtime. Now, Kansas City enters this contest as a 3.5-point favorite with an over-under set at 54.5 points. Looking back into last season there, week number 3, it was the Chargers who scored a 34-20 victory, while the Chiefs, they won the rematch in overtime, 34-28. The AFC West is absolutely loaded and every single game counts. How the West is won is anybody's guess, but the winner of this game on Thursday puts themselves in the pole position. Now let's talk about the Chargers for just a second here. Los Angeles, they're coming into Arrowhead fresh off a 24-19 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders. LA sacked Derek Carr 5 times, picked him off 3 more times, despite not having J.C. Jackson available. With a short turnaround, it is hard to imagine a scenario in which J.C. Jackson would be available for this one. Also, last week's showdown, they also lost Keenan Allen, who has an MRI on that hamstring. And with that short turnaround for him, he's probably not going to be able to make this game either. For the Chiefs, Mahomes remained a man of his word there, spreading the ball around against the Arizona Cardinals in week 1 as the Chiefs convincingly beat the Cardinals in Arizona 44-21. Now let's take a look at these quarterbacks, a little tail of the tape, if you will. Starting with Justin Herbert. Los Angeles is going to need to find a way to protect Herbert once again this week. They did a great job last week, but the Chiefs, they managed 28 quarterback pressures a week ago in Arizona. We mentioned earlier that Herbert's more than likely going to be without one of his best weapons there in Keenan Allen, who injured that hamstring. And like I said, with that short turnaround, it would be a miracle if he is able to play on Thursday. And if for some reason he's able to play on Thursday, he is going to be incredibly limited at best. As good as Herbert has been with Allen, I mean, it's pretty well documented. He has been pretty good without Allen as well. In the 3 games without his top option, Herbert has a passer rating of 120.9. He has 803 passing yards, 7 touchdowns in just those 3 games. So I think he's going to be in okay shape even without Keenan Allen suiting up. Last week versus the Raiders, Herbert put up a 129.4 passer rating, along with 3 more touchdowns at 279 yards. You take those 3 touchdowns, you add them to the 69 previous passing touchdowns, plus the 8 rushing touchdowns, it's easy to see why Justin Herbert is rewriting the history book here, rewriting those record books in just his 3rd NFL season. Mahomes, he's going to have his work cut out for him trying to avoid Khalil Mack. After a 3-sack, 5-pressure performance against the Raiders last week in just 33 pass rushing attempts, that was his Chargers debut against his good buddy Derek Carr. He likes Derek Carr. I don't know if he likes Patrick Mahomes the same way. Now, entering the 2022 season, Mahomes has thrown for 18,707 yards to be exact, and we're excluding that 2017 season where he kind of got a little bit of mop-up duty in there, along with 151 touchdowns and just 37 interceptions. Most of that was done with Tyreek Hill, and while this offense looked much different in week number 1, without Hill, it was still very effective. Against the Cardinals, Mahomes looked to be that front runner to take home his 2nd MVP. Okay, I get it. It's only week 1, but 30 of 39 passing for 360 yards and 5 touchdowns. Oh, yeah, and a pass rating of 144.2. Yeah, that's going to get everybody's attention, especially it should get the attention of Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Now, the scary thing is he did this in about 3 quarters of work because this game, it was already over by halftime. For the running back for the Chargers, we have Austin Ekeler. There was so much hype coming into the season surrounding Austin Ekeler and what he's able to do after accomplishing so much a season ago on the ground. In 2021, Austin Ekeler rushed for 911 yards and add 12 rushing touchdowns. We all know what he can do in the passing game. That's never been the question, going back to when he split the backfield with Melvin Gordon. However, in week 1 against the Raiders, Ekeler was limited to just 36 yards rushing on 14 carries. That is about 2.6 yards per carry. He also added those 4 receptions for 36 yards in the passing game. Good, but not great. Now, Kansas City, their defense, it held James Conner in check, allowing just, guess what? 2.6 yards per carry a week ago. And thanks to the Chiefs getting up early, Conner only saw about 10 carries in that contest. Nick Bolton, Willie Gay, they are going to attack the ball. I mean, this is one of the best young duos of linebackers in the National Football League. And when you have guys like Mike Dana and Chris Jones plugging up the middle, there's going to be room for these guys to get off blocks and get to the ball carrier pretty darn quick, making it a long day regardless of whoever's carrying the ball. For the Chiefs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we had a revival on Sunday as the former first-round selection was instrumental in both the run and the passing game. Kansas City, they didn't need Edwards-Helaire to chew up the clock late in the game, so the touches were somewhat limited, but what he did with those touches has to have fantasy managers salivating right now. And also pushing him up those ranks. Let's be honest, he's coming up those ranks. You probably had him about RB30, RB32. He should be no lower right now than RB15. There, I will say it. Edwards-Helaire, he averaged 6 yards per carry on 7 attempts. He finished with 43 yards. That's still more than what Austin Ekeler had on just 7 attempts. He also had 32 more yards in the passing game and had two receiving touchdowns. Much like the Chiefs did against the Cardinals, the Chargers got up early on the Las Vegas Raiders, which limited Josh Jacobs to only 10 carries. However, unlike James Conner, Josh Jacobs was able to rush the ball 5.7 yards per carry on his way to 57 yards. Yeah, that's pretty easy math for me there. So that's telling me right now that this Chargers run defense still isn't good. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, when given an opportunity, is able to bust out some big runs later on in this game. And you know what? Kenneth Walker, Drew Tranquill, they're not exactly the best linebackers, especially in the run game. Let's be honest with it. Now, we look at how the run game developed behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You have to start with Isaiah Pacheco. Now, not all stats are created. Let's be honest here. This game got out of hand. In fact, Pacheco actually had more carries than what Clyde Edwards-Helaire had. So with the Chiefs in cruise control, it was Pacheco, not Ronald Jones, not Jed McKinnon, who appeared to be the number 2 back in Kansas City. Pacheco received 12 carries, producing a whopping 62 yards. That's more than what Jed McKinnon had produced on 4 carries. By the way, that was 22 yards. However, it was McKinnon who had those 3 receptions for 27 yards on only 4 targets compared to Pacheco's 1 target that resulted in an 11-yard pickup. Now let's talk about pass catches. Let's move to the wide receiver position, and let's talk about the wide receivers for this Los Angeles Chargers football team. Bolt up, they say. Well, Mike Williams, you are going to need to bolt up after whatever that was you did last week. Mike Williams, he started the 2021 season with his hair on fire. Then injuries slowed him down towards the end of the season, yet he was still a top 15 fantasy wide receiver. So what on earth happened to him last week? 2 catches, 10 yards. That's like Xander Horvath type production, except Horvath, he actually ended up in the end zone. With Keenan Allen most likely out for this contest, do not be surprised if the Chiefs run some sort of bracket coverage with Rashawn Fenton and Justin Reed there, much like they did against Marquise Brown last week. What the Chargers need now is a hero, and that hero very well could be Joshua Palmer. The last time that Keenan Allen missed a game, it was Joshua Palmer who stepped up on 7 targets, hauling in 5 of them for 66 yards and a touchdown. Without Mike Williams, hey, it doesn't matter. Palmer, again, stepped up. 6 targets, and he scored once. So whether it's Keenan Allen, whether it's Mike Williams out of the lineup, when one of them sits out, it is Palmer that has been stepping up. So the law of averages, here we go, would say that if Allen or Williams were to miss time, Palmer is the one who's going to benefit the most and see an uptick in production. And it seems, like I said, Allen is going to miss this one. Palmer, he's still ahead of Deandre Carter in the pecking order here in Los Angeles. While Carter had the production, it was Palmer who had the greater snap share, 75% snap share, as opposed to Carter's 37%. This matchup's going to be fun. I mean, the matchup inside the matchups. We can make the assumption here that Mike Williams, he is going to be seeing a lot of Fenton and Justin Reed in that bracket type coverage, meaning a lot of one-on-one coverage for Joshua Palmer, who's likely to draw L'Jarius Sneed for this one. Entering this week, Sneed had a 62.4 PFF coverage grade, which means Palmer is going to have an opportunity to succeed in this contest. Now let's turn our attention to Deandre Carter, who had a pretty impressive week, number 1 there against the Raiders. I like Palmer more than I like DeAndre Carter, but that doesn't change the fact that what Carter didn't go unnoticed last week. Carter went on to produce 64 receiving yards on just 3 receptions, with one of those receptions producing 6 points. Now, with Trent McDuffie there getting hurt last week, it looks as though 7th-rounder Jaylen Warren is the next man up in the nickel packages, which means there's going to be an opportunity for the Chargers and DeAndre Carter to take advantage. When Allen went down, it was Carter who inherited much of that workload out of the slot. For the Chiefs wide receivers, we have to start with Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster, he moved around in this Chiefs offense last week. running 33 routes with 19 of them coming out of the slot. One of the newest Chiefs here, he benefited from Patrick Mahomes' ability to spread the ball around, catching 6 of his 8 targets for 79 yards. However, Juju, you got to get that mojo going. You can't drop the ball. He had 2 fumbles, only lost one of them. And if you put that ball on turf against guys like Asante Samuel, like Derwin James, that ball is probably going the other direction pretty darn quick. Now, Bryce Callahan, he is not a household name, at least not yet. Callahan, he's partially responsible for the limiting of Hunter Renfrow a week ago. Perhaps maybe Derek Carr having eyes only for Davante Adams factored into this somewhat, but let's give Callahan his respect. Renfrow only caught 3 passes for 21 yards on 6 targets. The next wide receiver we're talking about for the Kansas City Chiefs is Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who also ran some routes out of the slot there last week, with 10 of them to be exact, and 4 of them resulted in targets. Now, it was Davante Adams who drew the ire of Asante Samuel, mixing it up on more than one occasion. I mean, hey, it got pretty heated there, so you can expect Asante Samuel to bring that same kind of energy to Arrowhead in assignment against Valdes-Scantling. And finally, at the receiver position, let's throw in Sky Moore. Let's throw in Nicole Hardman. Both Hardman and Moore were relatively quiet during the opener, although Hardman did score on 1 of his 3 receptions. While Hardman had the score, those 3 catches, they only led to 16 yards. So much for being a burner. While the rookie Sky Moore only needed 1 reception to top Hardman in yardage on the 30-yard chunk play. With J.C. Jackson likely to miss this week after missing last week, expect to see Michael Davis draw whomever is opposite of Asante Samuel in coverage. Now, finally, the tight ends. Starting with the Chargers tight end, Gerald Everett. Rule number 1 in fantasy, start whoever the tight end is against the Raiders. I mean, if you followed rule number 1, you were rewarded as Everett hauled in 3 passes for 54 yards and a touchdown. Everett also ran a route on 23 of Herbert's 34 dropbacks, earning an 11.7% target share. Expect that target share to be closer to 18% this week without Allen in the lineup. And now finally, the GOAT of tight ends, Travis Kelce. Rule number 2, Travis Kelce is a cheat code at the tight end position, and it doesn't matter what the matchup is. In fact, he never ages. He seems to get better and better each and every year. Even at 32 years of age, Kelsey is still commanding 9+ targets, hauling in 8 of those passes per contest, and still he's going to produce 100 yards receiving, and probably, more than likely, he is going to score a touchdown just so he can bust out his latest dance moves. Now, Kelsey has 30 career games in which he has over 100 yards receiving. He had 121 last week. That trails only Rob Gronkowski's 32 and Tony Gonzalez's 31 for the most games ever by a tight end with over 100 receiving yards. Derwin James, he presents an interesting matchup for Kelsey, but I'm not about to start betting against Kelsey anytime soon. With that all said, I would not bet against fantasypoints.com. In fact, I engage you. I implore you to head to that website right now, fantasypoints.com, and get their latest subscription right now. Drafts, hey, they're great and all, but championships are won on the waiver wire. They're won with trades, and you're going to get the best of everything from Fantasy Points, from data all the way to waiver wire, start and sit advice. And you can save yourself a little bit of money using promo code 22Vipers10. That will get you 10% off that subscription. And we are out of here. We'll see you next week.